Hey guys, Jacob Nadav here from BellyProof.com, and I've got a rather great video for you today. Today we're going to cover why abs are not born in the kitchen, why you really need to stop crunching and what to do instead, and also we're going to cover mass versus tone and how to get the Adonis belt and make sure you don't get the worms. To start off, a ton of people tend to assume they've already got a six-pack. You've heard it, abs are born in the kitchen. Seriously? Here are 3 photos for you to judge. The first one is me at a chubby 22% body fat. The second one is a leaner 16, and the last one is a typical marathon runner at below 10% body fat. If abs were truly made in the kitchen, you'd expect the marathon guys to be ripped, right? But do you see a six-pack on them? That will make sense in a second, but first, here's what you really should not be doing. You need to stop crunching, and I mean like 10 years ago. When most people think about training abs, they think about crunches and sit-ups. And here's a real deal breaker. Crunches mostly work your hip flexors, not your abs. If you recently wondered why you don't have a six-pack, yet you do have tight hip flexors, there may be a connection. Not effective, but there's more to the story. Pay attention. As a human, I want my spine to be able to go everywhere. You see, going backwards is a vulnerable position. Same as going forwards. Same as getting my neck to its end range. Ever heard the expression, use it or lose it? If you don't train your body to actively use extreme range of motion, you will not only lose that range, but you will develop arthritis and discomfort. Trust me, you do not want to find yourself in a vulnerable position if you haven't prepared for it. This is how people sprain their ankles or do their backs. Correct training would be about control. Developing motor control of the spine by learning how to segment it, explore full movement and develop isometric control at the end range, and also learning how to keep a position stable. What most people do is the exact opposite. They spend 0 time developing control and all their time pushing into vulnerable positions with no control. I see people in the gym all the time. You look at yourself in the mirror and you think, I feel the burn in my muscles, look at me lifting 100 kilos, I must be strong. I look at the same person and I think, well, your spine is a bit crooked and your hips don't really function like human hips should. Instead of learning how to prevent movement of the spine when you extend, you spent hours working on your shoulders and completely ignored the damage you inflicted on your spine by repeatedly pushing it into vulnerable positions. Instead of learning how to prevent a back injury by resisting rotation, you thought, I'll casually rotate and bend my lower back because I feel the muscle in the front working harder. And instead of learning how to control and segment your spine in flexion, you decided it's okay to push your body continuously into flexed, vulnerable positions again and again and again. Most people realize the problem only when they get pain. But if you spent the last year working on your abs by rehearsing bad movement, then you not only injured something, you have actively and persistently trained your body to move badly. This is why I say, if you crunch, don't be surprised if your spine gets crunchy. 3. There are a ton of good exercises and options instead of the crunch. I'll give you one that's really effective and far safer. It's called hanging leg raises, but there are different ways to do them. Some variations will make the muscles firmer, some will result in hypertrophy, and some of it is just a bit of a pump, which brings us to point number 4, muscle mass versus muscle tone. The word tone comes from the word tonus, which means tension. Your muscles are stupid. They don't do anything unless the nervous system sends a signal for them to contract. It can ask them to contract a lot of muscle fibers at once or less muscle fibers. When you increase the amount of tension a muscle can hold, you are effectively asking your nervous system to increase its neural drive to that muscle. Over time, some tension will be held in the muscle on a more permanent basis because your nervous system wants to be ready and anticipate what your body is requiring. This is what we call muscle tone, and we perceive it as the muscle being firm rather than soft. The bad news, it does take a lot of work and time to build serious muscle tone. The good news, if you already built it, it's going to be super easy for you to keep it. Now here's a pickle for you. Many people believe that toning can be achieved by doing high reps of small weights. This is especially of interest to women who want to tone or firm up their bodies but don't want vascularity. Do you know what bodybuilders are calling the same technique? That's right, they call it pumping, as in pumping a muscle full of blood, which temporarily makes it feel firm, but not long term. Long term it demands an adaptation in the form of more vascularity. If on the other hand you want to build strength and size, listen up. There are 2 types of hypertrophies. One of them is called sarcoplasmic, which refers to increasing the plasma content of a muscle. The other one is called myofibrillar hypertrophy, and yes, I'm pretty sure I just mispronounced that. The second type would refer to increasing the content of contractile units within a muscle fiber. Eccentric training is great at creating strength, not only because it demands increased neural drive, but also because science says it's the best way to trigger the building of more muscle tissue and lay down proteins, partly by activating satellite cells, which are like stem cells for further muscle growth. What you find is that serious bodybuilders who want to build huge muscles often choose training methods that are 90% geared towards sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and pump, and about 10% towards myofibrillar hypertrophy and strength. That makes their muscles very big and firm when pumped, and a bit puffy looking and soft when they skip training. If you're aiming to look more athletic, you might need to change your training so it involves more eccentric motions and even isometrics. Gymnastic type training is probably the best in that regard. Lastly, Adonis belt, Apollo's belt, sex lines, V-cut, you know what I mean, those two mean sexy lines that round down your hips and really frame both the abs and your private parts. Anatomy at its best, or as some people say, it makes smart people go really stupid. You can get a much enhanced Adonis belt if you train your TA and internal obliques, but you gotta stop and think. If you do something like Russian twists or side bends, then you are breaking two laws. First, core anti-rotation and anti-lateral flexion means resisting those motions, not doing them repetitively. This exposes you to multiple injuries and lack of basic motor control of both your spine and core. The second rule it breaks is that it pumps the muscle and increases its size and vascularity. So not only you get a potentially bad functioning spine and core, you also get the worms, which by the way a lot of people get it nowadays and it's hard to reverse, so this is something to avoid. On the other hand, if you work to increase density and tone and you train via resisting lateral flexion, you're going to get a really good looking frame to your abs. I give more specific examples and go a bit more into the science behind it in my abs guide. If you want it, you can get it. It's, by the way, it's part of the BellyProof Plus program. It's a free bonus, so you don't have to pay extra for it. I want to finish with a little story. Not long ago, someone approached me in the gym and asked me if I can help him to the nearest six-pack machine. The guy was dead serious, which made me think, what should I explain to him first? The difference between mass and tone, the fact that crunches are horrible for his spine, or that isolating a muscle via a machine where its very function is not to work in isolation but rather coordinate is a stupid idea. But he was in a market for a quick answer, and I thought laughing at this would be rude to him, so I said, sorry dude, I've no idea, you better ask at reception. This video is my way to apologize to this very confused guy for not helping him find a six-pack machine. I really hope this video was useful, guys. If you got any questions, you're welcome to email me, and until then, see you later.